So ultimately, I was not prepared for the climate and the amount and the size of the bugs that live there. And also we had to deal with like wind damage in our first few months of owning the property. So this past year, my business partner and we purchased a triplex, an investment triplex in South Texas, sort of near the south of Houston, near the Galveston area. And there have been definitely a few lessons that we've learned from that experience that, you know, I couldn't have really prepared myself for. It's kind of one of those things like you can read all about it, you can talk to other people and their experience, but until you're there and until you have actual skin in the game, you really don't understand some of these things in detail or to the level of severity that I now do being a property owner out there. I should say South Texas is not my nor my business partner's home markets. We spent time looking around the United States, flying to various cities, just seeing kind of where things were hip and up and coming and seemed interesting and potentially investment worthy for us. And we really did enjoy what we found down there, south of Houston. Personally, we also do investment properties in Seattle and San Diego. So we have a little bit of experience in our own home markets, but this was not a home market for us. This was a brand new market, a brand new place for us to explore. And so, of course, there's going to be a ton of lessons learned and learning opportunities along the way. In fact, I actually have a video on the channel of, it's like a vlog, day in the life type video of when I flew into Texas to sign the final paperwork for purchasing the property. So if you want to see that, it's a little bit less formal. It's more like following me around with a phone camera. There will be a link either on this video or in the description if you want to check that out. And if you guys want to keep up with the Emerald Operations real estate investment journey that we are on, then please consider subscribing to the channel. You know, you can read all about the different areas. We spent weeks, months researching the area, looking at news articles, looking at geographic, political information, but nothing really prepares you for just living there and owning property. The first lesson we learned rather quickly after purchasing the property was the importance of wind insurance. South of Houston, like near the Galveston area on the Gulf of Mexico, like we get hurricanes. There are tropical storms that hit pretty much every single year. In fact, I think the last really big storm was quite a few years ago, but it flooded all the way up to Houston. So like there is always the potential for some very serious inclement weather down there. In general, I would say the insurance premiums are pretty high in the area. We did a little bit of research and we were expecting it to be high, but until we actually got quotes based on our property, we really did not know just how high they could go. I'm not going to share the financial details in this video. Maybe in the future I will do a detailed breakdown of the finances. If that's something you're interested in, then let me know. Fire and hazard insurance was not as necessary for us according to our insurance broker, according to our agent, and also just some mutual contacts in the area. I should clarify. It's always important to have fire and hazard insurance, especially if you're doing rental units, because you need that insurance. But in case of something happening, right, somebody leaving the stove on and the whole house blows up, God forbid, something like that, right? But there are other insurances that may be deemed more important in that area, like flood insurance, like wind insurance. And in our first few months of owning the property, we actually had wind damage like right away. We had a couple, it wasn't a serious storm, but it was enough to blow off a few panels of, it was like a roof siding vinyl material that we had. In retrospect, it wasn't installed the most effectively, so it kind of just ripped right off. But it was a quick fix for us, luckily, and we didn't have to file a claim. But it was, again, just something that we didn't know for sure if it would happen, and it happened pretty much right away. Also, we had an incident with the wind that caused a tree or a tree branch to fall into a power line by the home, which then caught the tree on fire. And the tree was like pretty close to the house, and I only found out about it because my neighbor down there called and was like, hey, there's a tree on fire in your yard and it might fall on your house. Very nerve-wracking, very scary moment. But we called the local fire department. They came, put out the fire. It was pretty small. They cut down the tree and trimmed around the power lines a bit more. I did talk to my insurance agent about that situation, and they did tell me that that would have technically qualified as wind insurance because it was a result of the wind damage. So again, it wasn't fire, it was wind focused damage specifically. Another lesson we learned from our South Texas real estate investment is how many flood zones there are. Like that area, if you live there or you've been there or you've seen pictures of it, like the homes are on stilts, like they're 10 feet off of the ground, and then the home starts from there for a reason, because much of that area is at sea level. And so it's very easy for a flood or a hurricane or a tropical storm to cause, flooding into the mainland. There are some areas that are not in a flood zone. Like if you're on Galveston proper and you're on the seawall, I believe the seawall is higher elevation, so the insurance agencies don't qualify that as a flood zone. Also, once you get more inland to like the Dickinson, Texas City area, those are also, I believe, there might be some pockets, but generally speaking, those aren't flood zones. But we were pretty shocked. Again, learning opportunity for us, just how many homes were on stilts and how many areas were flood zones. Like that was a realization that we had once we sort of got to the area. The next lesson we learned was about the number and the potential risk of wood-eating insects. Texas is humid and hot. As you get down to the Gulf of Mexico, it gets wet. So it gets wet, humid, hot, moist, and insects like termites and carpenter ants just love those conditions. And so actually when we purchased the home, it was a requirement for there to be a wood-eating insect inspection. And, coming from Seattle and San Diego, my business partner, we didn't understand the importance of that because we don't really have to deal with it out here. Down there, it's a very big issue. And so we had to have a full inspection. We had to have somebody crawl into the home, dig around the property and check for those things. Luckily, the home had been treated previously many years ago for insects and everything was taken care of. And in the last inspection, everything was good to go. But again, it was a huge learning curve for us, just like realizing that that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. In fact, I was just in Texas at the property a few weeks ago, and I laid down the termite repellent for the year or for the winter seasons, because from my understanding, during the winter, they are a little bit more volatile. Like they may come and go more because of the additional moisture. But if it gets cold, they may or may not come up. They may stay burrowed. And so just staying ahead, preventative measure wise, of like laying the repellent down around the properties and the foundation is very important. So learning opportunity for me there. There is also an important lesson we learned about the vicinity of different suburbs and homes to the refineries in the area. Texas obviously is very well known for having some very large oil refineries, gasoline plants, things like that. There's a few right there along the Texas City coastal border. And so there's a couple things we learned about that. The first is that sometimes the air quality kind of sucks. Like there are some days when I don't know if something happens at the plant, but you can like sort of smell, like the air just kind of doesn't smell that good. And so that was kind of a learning curve for us. It kind of deterred, or it feels like it would deter tourism a little bit for people that maybe know to expect that. We didn't know that that was going to be a thing. So we came in thinking, oh yeah, we're going to be on the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to be more or less tropical conditions. And then boom, it smells like gasoline, There's also like, if you haven't seen the refineries, they, all day and night, they're blowing fire. Like there's pyro, like literally pyrotechnics, out of all of the main pipes, or I don't know the technical terms for it, but my understanding is they burn the gases with fire to actually clean them. Like, it's actually a cleaning process to burn those chemicals. And so all day and night, you'll have these giant fire stacks just coming out of these towers at the refineries. One of the positive learning lessons from the refineries that we had was actually the fact that there's a good local labor force. So there's a ton of work there, a ton of jobs, a ton of blue collar jobs. And for us being real estate investors, this was a good sign for tenants and occupancy rates. And since we've got the property, knock on wood, we haven't had any issues with getting tenants and getting good tenants, because the tenants that are there, they're all working, right? They're working class. They go to work all day. They come home and they just sleep. So again, knock on wood, everything has been great so far, and they've been very responsive and pay their bills on time. The final lesson we learned was the seasonality factor, because again, with the property we purchased was a triplex, so we sort of split it up where some of the homes are, or some of the dwellings are long-term rentals, and then one of the other ones, the third one, is a short-term rental. We've been doing Airbnb out of it. It's kind of the most furnished, polished version of the three homes, and it's been very good for short-term rentals in the summertime season. But as soon as we hit winter, we started seeing a pretty serious decline in short-term occupancy rates, and it's almost a no-brainer, because you think about the fact that in the summers when people want to go out to like the coastal towns and be around water, in the winter, maybe not so much, especially as it gets cold and rainy and windy. We wanted to test it, and we have had some short-term rentals throughout the winter. But the winter is not over at the time of filming this, so we don't know for sure how it'll turn out. But we have learned that there's a pretty big seasonality factor, and so we'll probably this next year switch to doing long-term or medium-term, perhaps, over the winter seasons, from like maybe October until spring, maybe March, and then doing the short-term for the spring and summer seasons when more tourists are coming into the town, because they want to be closer to Galveston, the beach town. Which, for the record, if you haven't been to Galveston, it's very beautiful, especially in we just went in the fall, and honestly, that was my favorite time to be there. Like, there was no humidity, and yet the sun was out. It was like a nice 65 degrees, and it's a beach town, so there's like tons of food, there's sand, there's carnival rides, there's museums. It's a pretty cool little spot. Those are a few of the lessons that we learned from our first real estate investment in South Texas. We are humoring the idea of going back for additional investment in the somewhat near future. And if you're watching this and you have any tips or suggestions or questions about anything that you saw or heard in this video, then definitely please put it down below. Would love to get your insight, and we are always looking for investment partners. So if you're interested in getting involved in the project with us, now is a good time while we are still looking. We are still very early in our investing careers, so we are eagerly looking for additional partners. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video.